Hello, and welcome to Cisco Unplugged. My name is Kharem Espinoza, and I am a member of the Wireless Center of Excellence for the Americas here at Cisco. And I want to remind everybody that we're also live on YouTube /@GetUnplugged. And don't forget to register for more of our episodes at cs.co/GetUnplugged. Today, we have a very special session. We're coming live from Dallas, Texas.
Home of the Rangers?
Home of the Rangers, I was paid to say. And we have a very special session because I am joined by three of our experts, and we're going to do an Ask Me Anything session, all live here together. First, I'd like to introduce Leo. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to Cisco Unplugged, Leo.
Thank you, Karen.
And Mr. Dan Weaver, thank you again. Welcome back.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thanks
good
for
to
having
have
me.
you.
Yep.
And Al, good to see you. How are you? Welcome.
Well,
welcome.
thank you.
All right, so for questions today, we have no agenda. Free to ask any questions, please, on the Slido. If you're joining us from WebEx, you'll see the Slido panel on the right. If you're joining us from YouTube, you also see the Slido information in the description of the video. So just go to slido.com, put the information in there, and start asking. As we give you all some time to start asking us questions, we have collected some questions from previous episodes to get the show started. And we'll start with those, and then we'll start getting your live questions as well, and make sure to address those. You guys all ready?
Right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. So first question we had on a previous episode was, I'm going to give this one to you, Al, since you're sitting next to me.
All right. Okay.
What is Cisco's recommendation for number of clients on Wi-Fi, on a Wi-Fi 6E access point?
It depends. Next question.
Of course you would say that.
Yeah, and it really does depend, right? So there's not a fixed number. There's a maximum number that we can have in any given radio or access point. But in general, it's based on the supply and demand. So it depends on what kind of applications you're running, how many, what is the latency requirements of your applications. All of that is part of how we define what the demand is. And then, of course, the supply we can then meet based on the number of access points. And we have different access points with different numbers of radios, right? So we, depending on the type of access points you use, we may have, 4 radios in that access point, right? So that we can use for client serving. So it all depends on a lot of different conditions. There's a bit of an analysis that really needs to go on to get the right number. We a lot of times will say things like maybe 100 seats in a stadium per radio or something like that, but it's not really meant to be an exact capacity number. So there's not a magic formula, and a lot of this also depends on coverage. If you're to have a classroom and the applications of that classroom, for example, maybe it's only one access point. Especially given the access points now have 2 5 gigs and a 6 gig, right? So, we have the ability to supply a lot of capacity on one access point. So again, it depends.
Depends. Thank you, Al, for that. Appreciate it. Don't forget to ask your questions on Slido. I'm going to ask another one, maybe for you, Leo, since we hadn't seen you in a while on our show.
You know why? He's got a little Leo now.
Yeah, there's a little Leo.
Congratulations, huh?
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
He's still not sleeping.
He's still not sleeping.
We forgive
It's a
you. We
privilege.
forgive you that we hadn't seen you in a while. You
Ask him diaper questions now. That's what.
Let's see. What do you recommend? Do you recommend limiting the number of clients per radio per access point for better WNCD processing?
Okay. So WNCD, we're going to go with that. Just to recap what WNCD is, it's one of the main processes for the controller, and it just stands for Wireless Network Control Daemon. It just basically handles all AP client sessions. Now, when we start thinking of clients, we will reach a maximum number of clients in the air before the WNCD reaches capacity. And this is because wireless is a shared medium, so all the clients have to share air. And the more clients we have, we're going to start seeing collisions. And if you know wireless, collision is its number one enemy. So there's not really a specific set. Now, if you're really dense environment, something that you could do, maybe you can limit the probe update intervals, so you start freeing some airtime.
So it's kind of we still want to use best practices,
Right.
No matter what we're doing, right? And when we relate WNCD and maximum number of clients, that's kind of sort of like a bit of an apples and oranges, right? So I think what Leo is saying is use best practices, right, for when it comes to numbers of clients, like we just talked about per AP. WNCD loading is kind of it's a whole nother topic in a way, right? And so what drives WNCD loading, and I think, is you guys jump in here but it's more about roaming and that sort of stuff, authentications, roaming, any of the AP connectivity stuff. Those are what drives the WNCD process, the CPU on the WNCD processes. So there's really no connection directly there, but you want to use best practices for loading on WNCDs. You want to use best practices for loading on APs. Both of those, you want to make sure you're using the best practice.
And we've done a session on WNCD loading.
We did, yeah.
And so that was one that I did earlier in the spring. So check
Yeah.
that one out.
That's like 7 or 8 or something like that.
6 or 7.
6 or
something
7,
like that.
yeah.
It's early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, catch it on the channel. So we're starting to get a lot of live questions too.
Sweet.
This one is, and thank you, please keep asking, what is the current recommended code version? I'm assuming for the controllers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
You wanna
one.
share?
It depends, right? It really does.
All these answers are the same.
Yeah,
We
they're
just say it
kind of the same
depends.
thing, right? So we defer to TAC, generally speaking. So TAC has their list of published, recommended those gold starred versions. But then there's scenarios where if you need a feature out of 17.12.1, then that's where you really have to go. But I think a lot of my customers are running 17.9.4 now.
Well, 17.9.4a now,
yeah,
right?
9.4a, right?
Because of that last vulnerability.
Yeah.
So,
And but I do have a couple of customers running 17.12 in production. So
yeah.
Good call out on the vulnerability too,
Yeah.
yeah. Make sure to check that out.
Yeah, I got to experience that one firsthand.
all right.
True. Okay, continuing on the questions, maybe for you, Dan, can you mix 2.4, 5, 6 with 2.4 and 5? And what are the client implications if you mix?
With 6
With
gigahertz?
6, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple different pieces of that puzzle. It's, first we have the RF aspect of it, right? 6 gigahertz typically won't propagate as far. But the real issue that we've been seeing, or at least I've been seeing a lot of, is how the clients handle the security. Because 6 gigahertz requires WPA3. So I don't really have a lot of customers that have WPA3 in 2.4 and 5 gigahertz networks. So as they roam between networks, they usually have a bad experience. So one of the things we recommend is don't salt and pepper your 6 gigahertz APs. Have it pervasive or have it turned off. That's what I have a lot of customers that are doing now is they're deploying the new APs, but they haven't gotten them out across the entire building. So they're turning off 6 gigahertz until such time as they have enough coverage, because it's usually the roaming issues that are impacting the clients. That's the number one thing that we're seeing.
It's a little bit different way to authenticate, right? We
Yep.
use different authentication mechanisms than we've done
And
in
the
the past.
encryptions, right? It's that encryption.
Yeah, now with the WPA3, it's a different encryption, different whole security suite around that.
Yeah,
And so
that's generally what we're seeing as the number one thing.
we've now introduced transition mode, right?
And that's obviously big in helping clients get between the different versions,
Right.
Between the WPA3 and WPA2 or others. But it's still you still have the limitation of the client. Like we've seen scenarios where the clients don't really respond well to transition mode because clients can make poor decisions.
Maybe just explanation, maybe not everybody understands this, but if you move from WPA2 to WPA3, it's a complete re-authentication. Right?
Re-authentication.
So if you're doing EAP authentication, it's more it's more radius requests, all that kind of stuff. And so with transition mode, we don't have to do that, right? So that's the idea is we can keep that same WPA3 across there and not have to re-authenticate.
Yep.
So, but yeah. So it's new.
It's
so
new.
It's new.
And
so
so
with any
test it
new,
out. And like I said, we've been seeing issues with some of the clients. They don't respond well to it. Some clients do.
Yeah, and there's always there's security purists that don't like this.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
There's that too.
Yeah.
The next one is kind of like a philosophical question, I believe. So I'm going to come to you, Dan, because I think Al, because I
Okay.
feel like you've dealt with this one.
Philosophy.
He's a philosopher.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to go to those philosophical questions to you first. Do I need to ground my outdoor AP? Is lightning protection required? And if so, where does it even go?
I love these religious questions.
That's like OSI layer 9, right?
So, I mean, but it is a really good question. We get asked this question a lot, right? For the most part, I would say the default is ground it. It doesn't hurt to I've never seen a case where grounding it was a problem. In general, the reason why we ground it is more around power and more around codes, installation, for whatever your installation codes are in that area and that sort of stuff. It's not so, we tend to think of it as lightning protection. Well, there's some built-in lightning protection in the device itself. Having some place to bleed some of that is good. But remember, the lightning protection in the devices, even if we add lightning arresters on the antennas themselves, all we're doing is protecting, in that case, the AP against proximate strikes, right? If you get anything nearby or a direct strike, it's
metal.
Yeah, that's right.
It's liquid now.
Exactly.
There's no protection.
But the big thing I would say to watch for is if you're installing an access point with, say, copper, not coax, but like Ethernet cable, it's the penetrations into the building.
Yep.
That's what you want to protect. You want to make sure that you have some sort of lightning arrestor capabilities that goes into the building before it hits that. Otherwise, if you have a lightning strike, it'll take out that switch, maybe all the switches around it.
Yeah, that's a little too close to home there, Al. You're familiar with my direct hit on my house, and it took out literally everything in it. So
Dan's still living through the recovery
I'm
of
still
one of
trying
those.
to recover from that. But, And the other piece I would add in is, if you have a hazardous location environment, there are regulations about those installs, and then follow local code, especially when you get outdoors, because you can find yourself in a bad spot with the authorities. And
Right.
Of course. Good points, yeah.
No, that's a good question.
that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
But it is one that we do get quite frequently.
Yeah.
Let's see who want to take this one. Maybe Leo. You let me know. So why my clients do not remain on 6 gigahertz and they move to 5 gigahertz, even though I configured the SSID to support all of them, 2.4, 5, and 6.
Okay, so that when we talk about when client roaming between bands, that's more of a client-specific behavior.
Yeah.
And depending on the client, some of them might roam more aggressively than others. So what you think of, where is the client looking? How is it connected to the Wi-Fi? What it's looking for is the strength of the signal, the RSSI. So maybe connected to 6 gigahertz, but then it says, hey, 5 gigahertz is stronger signal. I'm just going to jump there. Might not be the wisest decision, but it's just the client. It doesn't. There's so much we can influence on a part.
Yeah, I mean, roaming is a client decision, and unfortunately, there are many clients that they just base it on how loud the signal is, not what is the best signal or the best throughput. It's just what's louder.
Now, the good news is we're working on some technology that allows us, basically with the client vendors, with in some cases specific client vendors, to get better information to the client so they can make decisions on things not just about the RSSI, but about maybe latency and how much latency in different queues and all that sort of stuff, so they can make decisions based on the type of traffic they have as to which AP they would want to roam to, and that'll make for a lot more intelligent roams in the future. Yeah. Not here yet. Well, to some degree, it's here, but that's an area that will continue to be improved over time. So I would expect, just like when we made the transition from 2.4 to 5, there was a bit of a period where clients were adopting, it was sort of the wild, wild west. And then eventually everybody kind of, fell in line and we have a lot more well-behaved. Now 5 gigahertz is very well-behaved, right? Yeah. 6 gigahertz is kind of going through that transition and we're getting to the point where, that'll get better and better behaved going forward.
Yeah, so. I saw devices that no matter what, they would, in those early days of 5 gig, they would go to 2.4. It didn't matter. The only way I could get them to go to 5 gigahertz was to turn off 2.4. Yeah. And then as soon as I turned it back on, they would jump right back over. And so that's the thing, right? Is we can encourage, we can kind of try and guide the client, but at the end of the day, it's the client that has to make that decision unless we start getting into things like RxOp and turning it off, right? So
Right. Right.
so we can only encourage, we can't force necessarily.
Yeah, well said. I'm going to take one from you guys since it's an easy one.
Okay.
Okay.
What is the 1800S replacement? Well, as you all know, we had the Catalyst 1800 sensor. We declared, we announced end of sale for that this year. We actually don't have a direct replacement at this point. We do have on the Meraki line the network lens, which is the ability to use the scanning radius on your APs to do a synthetic testing for network connectivity. And something soon will be also as well for Catalyst Center. So keep an eye out for some more announcements, but also please look into the Meraki network lens for now. And then here's...
We also get some...
Oh, please, yeah.
So like if you have Thousand Eyes in your network, we can get some
1000 Eyes
visibility from Thousand Eyes. So we didn't have that when we did the 1800S, which, like you said, 1800S was a synthetic client, right?
Yeah.
So it basically did things like log into your network and check your mail servers and all that kind of stuff. Well, now with some of these with Thousand Eyes, we have the ability to do a lot of that stuff natively with the endpoints and that sort of stuff.
Great,
So,
thank you.
and I know some folks that actually did an install on a Raspberry Pi just for fun, right? To be able to kind of add some of that capability. So I think, I don't know where we're headed over time. Like I said, the lens is kind of the next step.
Yeah.
But definitely the other piece of that is
Thousand
good to
Eyes.
add the
Thousand Eyes.
Thousand
Well
Eyes
said.
now.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
addition. And your definition of fun, yeah, we'll talk about it. Here's another that just came, they're coming pretty quick. When will Wi-Fi 7 hardware be announced?
Ooh, yeah. So we're expecting it to be announced in the spring, but the bigger problem with it really is it's not finalized, right? The standard's not finalized. So I know our developers are working towards products, but the big one is waiting for that standard to be finalized so that we can actually go forward and release it. And I was thinking about this the other day because I had a similar question from a customer, and it's kind of like when Wi-Fi 6, AX came out, right? It was everybody rushed to the market, and we ended up with an AP that didn't meet the standard. So that's why we had to end of life the 9117. So,
Yeah.
so that's one of the things, right? Is we're trying to wait for the standard to be finalized before officially having something. But we're expecting them sometime next summer. Is when they'll hopefully be shipping.
Yeah, and a couple of things. One is, if you think about the benefits of Wi-Fi 6E, going to all the advantages we got in 6 and then all the advantages we got in 6E, on a scale of 1 to 10, that was like a 9.5 in terms of standards. I mean
just the frequency, right? I mean, all that.
Yeah, all that additional spectrum, right?
Yeah, that was
and
huge.
then we organized it, right? So now we can take a time slice and divide it up into multiple slots or multiple RUs, we call them, right? Resource units. So that was a huge bump in terms of
absolutely.
When we go to 7 from an enterprise standpoint. No, we don't. The good news is you don't lose anything from 6 and 6E, right? So we carry all that over. So we got this big step on 6 and 6E. We're going to get another little step on 7, but it's not like a 6. So if you're saying, hey, it's important I get a Wi-Fi 7 API, I'm going to ask you why, right? What is the feature that you really see in Wi-Fi 7 that you're just dying for that you need right now? Now, if you got something, let me know, right? Put in the chat.
Right, put it in there.
Yeah, put it in the chat. We want to know.
But in my mind, Wi-Fi 7 is going to really provide a lot more benefit to the home users. Yeah. So, but anyway, so it's not as big of an enterprise. So I think that's a big advantage. So.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. This was interesting because we were literally talking about it as we were waiting to go live. Is Cisco doing anything with Hamina? I think that's how you pronounced it earlier. I know about Ekahau, I have it. What about Hamina?
You're the expert on that one. Man.
No, I'm not, yeah. So I think what the question is really I'm not going to, again,
Yeah.
you get me into all the religious stuff here, right?
yeah.
I don't know. That
You're the
wasn't me.
philosopher. You're the philosopher.
So no, so Hamina has come out with the ability to integrate with DNA Center, so we can migrate the maps just like we can with Ekahau, and I think that's great.
Yeah, that's
I mean, I'll just say personally, I think both of them are great solutions, right? Hamina has probably come the farthest in the shortest amount of time in terms of capabilities. I'm not saying anything you can't go and Google and figure out for yourself, but they've probably come the furthest in terms of capabilities. Ekahau still has the majority of the market, I think, but Hamina is a very good option for wireless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were telling us about the stadiums. I mean, that 3D modeling, that's pretty trick. That would have helped us back in the days.
Yeah, our stadium guys love it. Yeah,
The price point.
yeah,
It's a lot cheaper than Ekahau.
yeah. I don't know. I don't have the money to buy any of it, but
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This person asked about 3702s. They still have them in their network.
okay.
So what's the plan? How long should they have them? What should they do with this 3702s?
Yeah, so I mean, the 3702, I mean, it goes end of last day of support and April of next year?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a scary one because I think about that from a security aspect, right? If there's a vulnerability that comes up, it won't be addressed. The good news is right now they can run that 17.9.4a and have 3702s on there or any Wave 1 AP. You can also do that in 17.12. So there is that capability to have that migration. It's just the scary part is that last day of support coming in this. I think it's late April if I remember correctly, 31st or something like that. That's the part that I'd really be thinking about.
If you have them, talk to us. We'll figure out how to help you.
We
with
can help you migrate them.
Yeah, well, we can help you with that. But don't keep them any longer than you have to. We realize that budget cycles are
budget cycles, right?
cycles, right? So, but we definitely would not recommend keeping them any longer than you have to at this point.
Yeah, and like I said, my concern is always the security aspect.
That's right.
Well said then, yeah. Keep your questions rolling. We still have some time
That's a cool
here. On the Slido, on slido.com, please keep the questions coming. This one, when will you offer a 6 gigahertz outdoor AP?
We kind of already have those, don't we?
We do. Yeah,
do.
that's a good point. So I'll
I
go and take it. All right.
Okay. So either or.
Yeah, so we've got today we've got the 9167, which does 6 gigahertz capability. We've had that. In fact, I think it was the first in the market, right? So we've had outdoor Wi-Fi 6 capability for some time.
With a caveat.
Keyword is capability, right? As far as, and this is kind of similar to some of the standards discussion we had before too. In order for anybody to do outdoor Wi-Fi on 6 gigahertz, we have to have automatic frequency coordination, AFC system, which basically allows us to coordinate with the incumbents so that we don't step on any of these guys that actually bought spectrum and licenses and all that sort of stuff in the 6 gigahertz.
Also, it helps you play nice with your neighbor too.
Yeah, well, and actually, not that this was the point, but on AFC, one of the things that's kind of different about AFC, we typically think of AFC like we did in the cellular bands, where it was other people, other cellular users, basically, that we were trying to use the spectrum and coordinate spectrum with. Wi-Fi 6 is only coordinating with the incumbents. So 6 gigahertz, rather. It's only with that AFC, we're only coordinating with the incumbents, right? We're not trying to coordinate with other Wi-Fi users. And I think that's important. We're using standard Wi-Fi protocol stuff to coordinate with them, just like you do today with outdoor APs. The AFC is there solely to protect the incumbents.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
So
finish that statement. So we've got one today.
Right. Yeah.
Then there's so we do have a new AP that's just we just got it orderability, I believe, the 9163E. There will only be an E version of that, but it also does 6 gigahertz. So it's more of the enterprise. So if the IW, when we talk about the IW 9166 or 7067, is that's an industrial grade access point. So
hazardous locations, things like that.
Yeah. Yep. which, by the way, that's another place where grounding comes in, is hazardous locations, right? So and then now this new one is more of the enterprise, kind of standard enterprise grade to replace the 9124, but having 6 gigahertz capability.
Yep, yep. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to come to you, Leo. Higher frequencies such as 6 gigahertz don't propagate as far as lower frequencies. Do I need more APs going to 6 gigahertz? And what would be a good rule of thumb? Don't say it depends. For an office deployment.
I've already taken that answer.
It's the Buddha science.
Yeah. Dark art.
So, okay, before I say anything, take it with a grain of salt and always do a site survey.
Yeah.
Getting the disclaimers out of the way. Now, you could compensate, right? So let's assume you're in an office space, fairly open, and as long as your 5 gigahertz deployment was properly designed, meaning you're not max power all the APs, and you're using, let's say you're using 40 megahertz channels and 11 dBm as power, you could have similar cell size on 6 gigahertz. If you have 80 megahertz channels now, 6 gigahertz, we have more channels, so we can, 80 is the new standard, and we can bump up the power to 14 dBm. That, of course, if you have brick walls, depending on your environment, it might affect it, but that would be a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. And it's all, I think the key part of that is it's all based upon, did you have a true 5 gigahertz design to begin with? If you have your APs operating at the higher powers, then you probably want to look at doing a site survey at that point and redesigning it.
We did a real in-depth session on this,
Yes.
episode 5-ish, something
5-ish,
like
it
that,
was in
I
the
think.
spring,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you want to know the math behind all
Yep.
this, and that would have been the answer I'd have gave. It's just math.
And the philosopher's the one that gave that session. It was excellent. So,
Yeah, whiteboarding and all, I remember.
Oh yeah, we had to learn how to whiteboard.
all right.
Thank you. Thanks, Leo. I'm going to come to you, Dan, with this one. I'm going to have to read it because it has a lot of numbers. I don't want to get them wrong.
Uh-oh.
But I know
Numbers.
you have. I know you have experience with this one. I'm refreshing a 3802E and a 2566 P4W-R antenna at my college stadium. Can I use that 9166D ones that we were talking about?
Yeah.
And the person also added, there is an overhang to protect from the weather.
Yeah. So this is really kind of a multi-point thing, though, really, is it's the overhang is the overhang. And I've done this. I have deployments out there that I've done myself. But I've also let the smoke out of APs that way because these are indoor rated APs. They're not water resistant. They're not temperature resistant. And so you can let the smoke out of them because I had a customer that did this it was actually a baggage area. They had a big storm that came through and there was enough mist in the air that it was able to saturate the AP and again, let the smoke out of it. So they have 9167s there now, but because that's part of the problem, right? So you don't want to have it out there for that reason. The other piece of it too is that AP it's a low power indoor rated device, right? So it's regulatory speaking, it is not allowed to operate outside, at least on the 6 gigahertz spectrum. Now you could go and you turn off 6 gig and do dual 5 gig and do it, but then you bring back the whole point about the weather, right? So for that. That's what the 9163E is for, is you deploy that instead so that, because it is outdoor rated, it can take the humidity, it can take the temperatures. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you. Thank you for
So could
asking
you?
that.
Yes, but at your own risk.
At your own risk. Don't say
own
that
peril.
Dan said it was okay. Because
exactly.
again, I killed one on my back patio, and it's completely covered. But we had a storm, and the wind blew just right. And
Yeah.
went out there the next day, and it was dead.
Yeah. We definitely have better solutions.
We
for
have
that.
better solutions.
Yep. Here's a quick one that just came in. Is there still a 200 client limit per AP?
I don't believe so. I think they've raised the numbers. The numbers have been raised in terms of the data sheet, but would we ever recommend 200 clients per AP? That's probably
Does
the
it
better
matter?
question. Yeah, I don't know that I would ever really want that because it's that's when bad things happen.
Yeah.
I mean
For
that's
IoT devices. IoT devices, I mean, you can have a bunch just IoT and alternate the times they work.
Yeah, I mean, with time slicing.
And
but-
certainly, it was not per AP, it'd be per radio.
Per
And
radio.
you'd look
Yes.
at doing that anyway. And a lot of our APs have
Yeah.
3 and 4 radios in them, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've
I think some of them at the 9136, I think I remember reading it's like 400.
you're hitting the
Yeah, but
limit-
if you're hitting the limit per radio,
even
then,
if it was 200, you're hitting the limit.
yeah, talk to us and we'll help you,
Yeah.
redesign that because that's when
Yeah.
bad things happen.
Yeah,
That would be a poor client experience, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, one of the things I like to say is because AI is a big thing now, right? So all the AI in the world won't compensate for a poor design.
Yeah,
Right. So it doesn't matter how much AI you have, how much AI we add from a Cisco standpoint. If you got a poor design,
Yeah.
all it can, it can't work outside those boundaries. And so this it would be an example of
Yeah.
a poor design
Yeah.
if we went beyond that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hear that, right? Because, data sheets and the data sheet comparison between vendors, we hear that, and that's when the questions usually come up, but it's always, we don't recommend it. That's going to be a very poor client experience.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick check on time. I think we get time maybe to squeeze a couple more questions, and then we'll have to wrap it.
Okay.
If we don't get to your question, we'll make sure to address it on future episodes because it looks like this one's going really well. So I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll have more of Ask Me Anything sessions.
This is
So
fun.
Yeah.
it's fun. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we got to get the rest of the Texas Mafia in here.
So this one, I'm going to try to answer it. Please add if you feel like it. We've started to monitor a few Catalyst switches in the Meraki dashboard. Thank you. That's awesome. We don't have a DNAC appliance, Catalyst Center appliance. And then the person kind of puts in quotes like too expensive. Will we be able to manage our 9800 controllers in the Meraki dashboard? Great question. So thank you for using the monitoring capabilities that we have available. More to come there. Definitely 9800 monitoring will come as well pretty soon. To the comment of too expensive, I would add that you can also take a look at, now we have options for running Catalyst Center natively on AWS. We also have options to run it on VMware and more
That's new.
VA options to come. So that's a possibility as well. And yes, looking forward for the 9800 as well to be added. So thank you. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I believe EFT on that starts in December.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know I'm excited to test that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the good news is there's a lot of options, right?
Yeah.
So we can pretty much meet you wherever you want to be.
Yeah,
We've
absolutely.
got a solution for it.
Reach
So
out
just-
to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Reach out to
And
us
the
for
VM
sure.
the VM piece around ESXi, I mean that's key. It's fairly new, but that is key. There's a lot of customers that makes a great Prime replacement because a lot of customers were running Prime on their
Well, you
VM
can-
environment, and now they can just.
Yep.
They had there's the concern about consuming another appliance, and now they can just move it to another VM.
And it's both on-prem,
Yeah.
like in your data center, or in the cloud.
In the
either
cloud,
one,
so
right?
there's options.
Yeah, as
Beautiful.
well as the Meraki cloud. So.
Yeah, true. Beautiful. Okay, I guess we'll take one more just because of time. And Leo, because you were talking earlier about WNCD is your favorite topic, I think I'm going to go with this last question back to you. Do you recommend to move outdoor APs that we were also talking about into one site tag for better WNCD processing?
I'm gonna borrow the pens because
Next time we got to come up with a replacement for it. Depends.
Yeah.
typically I'll prefer to have my outdoor APs on their separate tags, right? You don't want them to have maybe the same RF profiles as your indoor, or really it's not expected for a client to roam coming out of a building to a parking lot.
Yeah.
So it's important to know what are the best ways to assign a tag to an AP and what does it mean. So for example, we want to use customize. We don't want to use the default tags. We want to make sure that we keep between 500 APs per tag. So you don't want to go over that. If you go, it's not going to break. But stay to those practices, and it really depends on your design.
Yeah, the use case piece is the key part, right? You know, if you want to be able, if you need that fast roaming from inside to outside, that you start to get into that scenario where you have to, but it all ties back to, best practices of leveraging the WNCD processes in a way to get best performance.
And maybe just maybe not everybody's familiar with the WNCD process, other than you mentioned it was a daemon, but so roaming between processes or within a process can cause CPU. So it really, it's a CPU usage thing either way, right? So what we try to do is we try to distribute that as evenly as possible across those different processes, right? And so there's some automatic functions that we've added for that now, like in 1712, to kind of help balance that. But prior to that, we had to just pretty much use site tags to balance that across there. And so it was a good idea to do things like maybe let's take a higher ed, maybe I have APs in a dorm and APs in a classroom, right? Well, they would be good to have on the same site tags or the same WNCD processes, because typically when you're roaming in the classroom, you're not necessarily roaming in the dorm, right? And so if you can, ways like that are, now we're coming up with better ways to do this automatically. But if you're still on older versions of code and you don't want to do the more automatic versions, these are the kinds of things you want to think about from a WNCD process.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that higher ed scenario, it's not every, I know we have, customers that are doing this with pervasive outdoors, but it's still fairly uncommon to be able to maintain a session from one building to the next. It's usually a roam because there's usually not that pervasive coverage outside. So.
Well, thank you. We've definitely come to the end of our episode. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to be surrounded by these wonderful expert coworkers of mine here on site in the Cisco building. Thank you so much for joining us and for your questions. Don't forget to follow us on youtube.com/@SymbolGetUnplugged. Register for future sessions in 2 weeks. We're going to be back with a couple of guest speakers from our business unit talking about best practices for back to school season, especially. So don't forget to join those episodes. You can also register beforehand at cs.co/getunplugged as well. And thank you for joining us. And as always, stay connected and unplugged.